So hi everybody, I'm Steve Snyder. I'm the CEO here at the Fleet Science Center, and we've got some great guests on our podcast here today. Growing up, when I was maybe 11 or 12, we moved my great-grandmother from her old apartment to a new apartment, and we had to go through all her stuff, and I got this giant pile of books. And one of the books that was sitting on top of there was this book called Are There Alligators in the Sewer? Right? I took it. I never actually read it, but Alligators in the Sewer, I remember looking at it going, oh, that's cool. I thought, wait, there are alligators in the freaking sewer? And can they get out? Right, kind of really freaked me out. But that's sort of the first time I can remember sort of an urban legend. The first time I came across one of those, my cousin's brother's son has a friend who blah, 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 blah happened to, right? And it was a very, very strange kind of thing. But luckily for me and for all the rest of us, for the last 15 years, we have had the opportunity to have someone go through and figure out, are those urban legends true or not, with the Mythbusters show. And look what I've got here today. Isn't this cool? I've got a pair of Mythbusters right here. If you've been watching the latest season, you may have noticed sort of a different energy to the show. There are fewer berets, more beard, less mustache, and some really great, cool new stuff coming out. And so I'm here with John and Brian, the new hosts of the Mythbusters. So welcome, guys.
Thank you so much for having us.
All right. Let's just start with something easy. So thinking about, back when you were a kid, is there an urban legend, a myth that you just, remember kind of like, oh my gosh, is that real? Wouldn't it be cool if?
Oh man,
that's a tough one. As a kid, I questioned everything. Like a story I tell all the time is from about 5 years old. Every toy I got, I was like, well, how's this toy work? And I'd take it apart. And that was about 5, and it was probably about 15 before I started putting it back together reliably. So, Christmases were a day of fun and then a year of disappointment for me, but I still loved it.
Right.
So that sort of interest in how everything works, how the world works, has been around since the very beginning for me, whether it's myths or just toys.
Yeah, that's the same thing for me too. Like, not to harp on Brian's thing, but I remember working in the computer lab when I was a kid, just to help the teacher organize stuff, and she would give me old hard drives to take apart. And so I would go back and then plug 9-volt batteries into the motors to spin them up and crazy stuff like that. So I think it's just funny that we've both been doing this stuff on different sides of the country or the world. 'Cause I know you grew up outside, but that's our thing.
Oh, that's very cool. So here's a question I always have, right? And this is sort of my take on it. Are you a scientist or an engineer? Another thing, you take it apart. Did you put it back together?
Oh, it's so fun.
Right?
Oh my God, yeah.
I took it apart. I took it back together. But I like to think of myself as a scientist, an engineer. I try to be an artist. I'm not great at art, but I think you limit yourself if you think about yourself as just a scientist, because then you go, I should never touch something. I should only do data. Or an engineer goes, I should create something for someone to create. But honestly, if you want to be the best scientist, you got to go through the engineering, through the making, and get from the beginning to the end. And as a biologist, I like to think that's what we do all the time.
Biologists?
Oh yeah,
yeah. A lot of engineering and biology. Well, maybe today.
Some. I mean, my degree mixed with biology with criminal justice as a minor. So when you're looking into that, I mean, it's an applied biology. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, cool. So you guys also grew up watching Mythbusters, right?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. I mean, so what was it about the show that drew you to it? What was the?
Man, I still remember the first time I saw the commercial before it even aired. Like, oh, new show, Mythbusters, and I was just like, it felt weird. It's like I had been waiting for this show to happen. It's just so, as a kid, I was like, that's it. Like, that's, and once it started, it's like their combination of the depth of projects that they do. It's like, oh, well, you can try this at home, or you should never, ever try this at home. And so it really drew me into like all the crazy stuff they'd like. And I love watching them build stuff too. Like me and Brian would take stuff apart. And so the entire process of like the build, the artwork, the pageantry of the Mythbusters, I loved all of it.
Yeah, I think I gotta say that very first preview, same thing for me. Is like I'm sitting here watching this, and mind you, I've taken apart every remote control car I've had in life, right? Just started getting it back together, and there is Jamie Heineman flying in a helicopter with the same remotes I use for everything, but with a full-size model car with rockets strapped to it. And I was like, well, surely that's where I need to aspire to be.
All right, so let's say aspire to be. So how do you go from, say you were, Staten Island and a biologist and paramedic. How do you go from that to myth-busting?
Oh,
Tell
man.
yours first?
Yeah, it's just a crazy one dream hop to another. But basically, 14-year-long fans watching it from high school all the way till grad school, and they retire.
Yeah.
And so now there's like a hole in my life. I'm like, what do I do? Like, it's just weird not having them around. And so I would literally Google Mythbusters to see what Adam Savage and Jamie Heineman were up to. And I know that he's working M5. He's closed up doing all these different contracts. And Adam Savage is doing like Tested. And he's going around Comic-Con, San Diego, New York. And one day I Googled Mythbusters and the application came up. And I was like, well, okay. And then I finished my master's, went back a month later. The application's still up. I applied, and a week later, like, hey, you want to talk to us about, maybe coming over here and doing Mythbusters? And I was like, oh my goodness. It was nuts.
My story's a little different. I had just finished being a drilling engineer because of the downturn in the oil and gas business. And I was moving out of my little white picket fence into a travel trailer and just sort of trying to figure out what to do. I'd applied to a million jobs, and my mom says, hey, I saw a thing on the news, Mythbusters is looking for people for a competition show. And I went, that's great, Mom. And then about a month later, my mom goes, hey, you applied for a month more jobs, like maybe apply to this one. I'm like, okay, I'll do it. So I'm up at night, I'm filling out the application, and like my dreams to have been a Mythbuster. So this is like the farthest from possible thing that could ever happen. So I'm sitting there filling out this application. It's like, how good, very engineering like, because I've been a drilling engineer before that. And page 3 is a question, what was it? How epic is your beard? And I realized I've been going about this all wrong. So delete 3 pages, fill them out like I'm having a good time and not like some sort of like, uptight engineer that I was working. And next thing I know, at the end, I'm sending off the video. They asked for a very specific 90-second video. And I send off something off YouTube that I already had there. And I get an email just a few days later from the EP who's been the EP of Mythbusters for like 10 years who says, hey, do you want to send in the right video? And I thought to myself, yes, I do. Thank you. Yeah. So in like 24 hours, I made this great video, sent it in. Next thing I know, I'm Skyping with Dan, and everything else is literally on TV.
Oh, it's very cool. That's very, very cool. So you guys, have kind of a pretty strong individual making background, right? In terms, consider yourself makers. And just was always doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I love anything where that concept of understanding how things work lets you put it all back together.
Right.
But the idea to put it all back together is great, but it's all about learning how to make your own original for me. And so I love that idea of making, like I do blacksmithing, drones. I mean, he, as a product designer, he makes anything and everything you can dream of. That's literally his job. So
it's all very cool. So, obviously making has kind of gotten a big boost over the last several years, right? Well, given that there was a word for it, right? As opposed to, the weird guys who were footing around in the garage, right?
Yeah.
Right? So that's what it was doing there. So, what do you kind of see as the sort of maker movement has evolved and become a thing, right? Because before it was just something you did.
Yeah.
Right? You were either there doing it, or now it's sort of a movement.
I think it's absolutely fantastic. And with the increase in things like YouTube, Instagram, stuff like that, the exposure to the rest of the country and the rest of the world is like, it gives you a complete access to everything that everyone's doing all over the world at once. And I think it's just like incredible. I've even gone on YouTube like, I wonder how you do this. And there's at least 1,000 videos of someone doing it in different ways. And then that, and plus a lot of the in-home manufacturing techniques, stereolithography, 3D printing, CNC stuff. It's just letting people do very precise work at home.
Yeah, this like you hit on it. This idea that maker is now part of our vernacular. That you can talk to someone on the street and say, "Oh, they're a maker," and people get that. It's a huge transition because people had no idea. But there's a million people tinkering, whether they were building model boats, whether they're building RC cars, whether they're amateur astronomers. They're all part of the maker community because they're all making stuff. You don't have to be a specific, like, I don't know what an Arduino is. That's fine. Maybe you weld steel, but if you're doing it to build something for your desires out of your mind, you're part of this maker community. And the fact that everyone welcomes all of them and shares their knowledge is unbelievable. And I mean, it's great.
Oh, very cool. So what's the coolest thing each of you individually made, completely apart from the show, right? Now you've got all these other new resources and kind of free reign to do rocket swords and exploding fart tents. So, right?
I'm pretty proud of the fart tent explosion, honestly.
It's very cool. It's very cool. But it's probably not something you were sitting around your garage thinking, let's do that. What's the coolest thing you... All right. Well, good. Then I really want to know. Right? What's the coolest thing you did?
You need a minute?
I think I have one.
Okay, go ahead.
This is actually not too long ago, but I was doing a kind of interactive design exhibit thing, and basically I did a thesis on how to get everyone prepared. And the lesson from that is really, it's more of a mindset than kind of all the tools you can carry. And so I did an event. It was like a MacGyver event. You come in, you put the vest on, you put the mullet on, very important.
Oh, yes.
And I built a stage. It had a grate and a sword grate. And the idea is you spin a wheel and you drop a wallet, sunglasses, money into this grate, and your job was to take the things out of your pocket, newspaper, floss, gum, to retrieve the items, so when you finish it, you have a feeling, I can, I understand now. And so the cool thing I built is at the end, when you win it, I would shoot you with a confetti cannon. And so you can't just do them where you pack it in every time. There's no time for that. So it's very cool. It's got like a sliding mechanism. You drop little cartridges in that I built by hand with aluminum tape and hand cut confetti, and you put the whole thing together. And that was like, it just brings so much joy to people who get shot by it. It's just like a boom, and the confetti rains down. Everyone's like, ah! And I think that's one of the most fun things I've built before Mythbusters.
That's great, man. I've never heard of that one.
Dude.
That figures you made a confetti gun. Huh? Just make people happy. I'm not sharing with humanity quite so much. I think my favorite though is I love blacksmithing and hot things, but electronics, getting things done in weird ways is amazing to me. And so I was early on into this flying drones, quadricopters, and quad building, and there had been this sort of ethereal impossibility in the world of drones of 8 motors on what's called a V-tail. So your front's flat with a motor above and below. The back is a V, which means you have one internal motor with a smaller space for props and one external. And I looked around, I was like, there's got to be an octocopter V-tail out there. And the only one I found in existence was 6 flat motors with single outside motors on the V-tail. And I went, well, that seems fun, but that's huge. I want a modern racing drone, so 250 millimeters tops, with the octocopter V-tail. So I worked with a French company that made a frame that I saw could work, paired up 3 of their frame kits, designed all the internals, and made the world's only full octocopter coaxial V-tail. And it is glorious. This thing is like a flying lobster from hell. I mean, I called it afterwards Project Hymenoptera because it sounds like you're being attacked by a swarm of bees, and it goes... I don't know how fast it goes, but it crashes fast. Still love it, though. It's literally sitting in my living room. And that Project Hymenoptera is probably my favorite build of all time because just my life went into it for about a month and a half, and the math they said couldn't be done.
That's very cool.
Awesome.
That's, I think actually, you're telling me the story, what I'm particularly also loving about it is the fact that, 30 years ago, you had that conversation, and people be looking at you weird. Right?
Oh, man, yeah.
Right? Absolutely. And now it's, of course, why, of course, that's really just a wonderful thing that sort of the true maker geek science piece is sort of so embraced now, which is really wonderful. And obviously the show has been a big part of it, and I suppose that's actually probably one of the opportunities you guys get to do now, right? To sort of, I'm sure even now, again, the first season's down and out, right? And so you guys have got a chance to kind of meet folks who have been watching that season and seeing, all right, that's that next generation of folks getting really excited and jazzed about it.
It's been a huge honor to get like all the messages online. People are telling us, every Wednesday we sit down with our kids and watch your show, and our kids love. And I think the other day someone posted kids literally playing us. Like it was their playtime, and they're shooting Nerf guns, and they're in the closet as the bunker, and they're shooting, like driving a car through a little wall they build, RC car. I mean, I never thought in my life, let alone emulating us doing science, that's unbelievable to me.
Oh, it's very cool. Very, very cool. So I imagine you guys have also had some other opportunities there. I know you guys did Comic-Con.
Yeah.
Right? Was that your first Comic-Con?
Yeah, for us to be, on the other side of it, on the stage, it was definitely my first time.
Yeah.
I've been to one in Dallas, and I was actually selling pottery with a friend. So
okay. Well, have you been to San Diego Comic-Con?
We have yet to be.
All right.
That's our step up.
There
now,
you go.
I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll have to make sure you guys come down for
that
because it's something else.
Let's have some fun with the museum at it.
Absolutely. All right, cool. So now you've got so you've been kind of making kind of all your lives. You've been engaged in these kind of things because you like to do it. Now you've got this brand new opportunity, right? Which probably opens a lot of new doors to you before. What's been sort of the coolest thing so far about being able to do this?
I think for me, we're meeting up with some people prior to the Great American Eclipse when it happened, and so Science Channel had a big deal with it, and had live broadcasts. I mean, it was incredible. And we had talked about this idea of if you took a steak and sent it to space, you'd heard this myth that if it came through, that was the perfectly cooked steak during re-entry. And so here's my question: how do you get a steak to space and send it back in through re-entry? Well, by the time we were done meeting with this people, this has gone from an insane idea to a Mythbusters possibility.
Oh, that's very cool.
That's been the best moment for me.
There you go.
I was like, I can send a steak to space, and everyone's covering the cost right now if they can. Unfortunately, we didn't quite get it together yet. That's a hard one to do, but I can't wait till we get a chance.
Well, you got a car up there now, so we can talk to Elon.
That's right.
That's the one you wanted. We can bring a steak back.
Yeah.
Right?
Just go through the drive-thru.
That's right.
That's right.
So given that sort of the opportunity, is there something that, let's take it away, not just for the opportunity you have now. If you, putting aside aside, so putting aside cost, time, putting aside physics, laws of it, is there something, a myth that you were like, oh, that would be so cool if it could really happen, but it's just not gonna, but you really wish you could?
You know, we actually designed one that we couldn't test. It's a huge challenge because the essential idea is to take internal combustion engine and make it an external combustion engine. So a series of explosive cylinders with slugs on the back of a vehicle that each one goes off slowly. So essentially you have like thousands of cannons aimed in a direction that you want to fire in sync while driving a car.
I remember all those meetings. I remember all those meetings. And I remember I'd drawn the idea on the board. You'd be like, oh, what do you guys think? How do we want to do this and that? And I had drawn it on the board, and then our director looks at it. He's like, and Steve Christensen, he goes, and he's been working on the show for nothing should surprise him. And he looks at this drawing that I've now put on the board, and he's like, oh no, mate! It's just a bunch of cannons pointed back. He's like, where would you stand? If it blows up, it's dangerous. If it shoots the things out, it's dangerous. If we lose control, RC, it's dangerous. It was just like we're gonna hold off on this one. And that was a hilarious meeting.
All right. So there's a danger threshold that's still sort of in place there, right?
Yeah.
Not blowing the crew up. That's probably a good.
Everything we do, we do in a safe way. For that one, we just got to figure out how to do it safe. So that's the thing is there's always a way. I just need like 100 square miles or something.
Very
Long
cool.
range.
So as you think about, so you've done the first season, you're going into the second one now. What would you hope 15 years from now, right? When you guys are saying, all right, that's it. I'm going back to the trailer, and I'm graphic design. This is it. We've done our piece here. What would you hope the outcome is?
I would love for some of the kids that we've met already at the Fleet Museum to be like, yeah, we're applying to do this, we're going to be the next Mythbusters. And for us to hand the baton, I don't know, maybe your hat and my glasses, we can hand them over to the next generation just to watch them go. I think the important thing is that Mythbusters has grown beyond just like, oh, it's people blowing stuff up, and it's grown into a concept of like challenging questions and then taking things and testing them and finding out for yourself, in fact, if it's real or not. It's building that curiosity. And so long after we're done and we're retired, hopefully not too soon, I can't wait for like a next generation to be like, all right, these little kids coming up, lab coats, whatever, and just doing what we're doing, just continuing on forever. I mean, there'll always, as long as the world keeps spinning, there'll always be questions that come up and weird things. You're like, that can't be right. And there has to be someone there to show everyone what's real and what isn't.
All right, that sounds like a great. That would be a great kind of legacy to be able to take on there, right?
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
All right, so what's the? So you've been doing obviously a few interviews, one or two here and there, right? What's the question you wish has been asked but just hasn't? What are you even waiting to say? Boy, you know what? I've got this story to tell, or no, it's just why aren't they? That's
a tough one, man. That really is because I mean People are incredibly good at asking questions you just never think they would even notice on their show. They watch Mythbusters, and I was joking with him. I think they watch it one time, and then they go back and go frame by frame by frame because they notice stuff that I had no idea. Like, we'll set up things in the background for little jokes between us and the crew and whatever, and then I'll get in a shot for a 1/10 of a second, and someone will be like, and send us a screen capture on Twitter, and we're like, look, if they're reading that much, that's amazing because they're paying attention. But figuring out what people ask, like, we get all the questions. I mean, like I said, the questions have blown my mind that people ask me. So,
I think everyone's been very thorough. From the people we meet, just like in the museum, or even like when we're doing podcasts or TV interviews. So I think everyone I'm very grateful that people are very thorough of our work. It's kind of quite an honor.
All right, cool. Well, it's great, and we're glad you guys could come down here and spend some time in San Diego, and obviously opening the Mythbusters exhibition here, which has been, been really fantastic to have on site, and now again, the Mythbusters exhibition, we're waiting to see, what are the new myths that get added to this now, as it goes global.
7 more years global. They're going to amp it up, can add some stuff, so you'll probably see a little bit more of our faces in it.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Well, and so what have you done so far that you think is all right? This is one that this should be an exhibition. This is one that
I think we did the test of like the Asian carp that jumps in the in the rivers. The idea that if you're skiing behind a boat and one jumped into your face, what would happen? It's sort of that myth: will it kill you? Will it not? Does it hurt? And to do that, we made a giant fish shooting cannon, which of course I would love to see here. But I think also we had this crazy bohemian like dude in a boat ski setup because we couldn't put a guy that, so we had to tow Buster and
with an accurately built spinal cord
Yep.
You know,
So-
all the soft tissue in between, all the muscles holding it up, just to see what kind of neck damage you sustain.
And so the beauty of that rig of it's a simple tow rig with the anatomically correct neck with everything in it, that is sweet and that is perfect Mythbusters because it's only accurate exactly where it needs to be to make everything work in its glorious.
Oh, that's cool. So is there new technologies that you guys see coming out that sort of you would expect is gonna be able to add to that? Because obviously, you know, you think look about the early days and what was there and what Buster looked like and sort of as it's evolved over time.
There's a great one. We had a myth where we tested road rage. The idea that, you know, calm music versus loud music induces more road rage in someone. And we had to think, how do we test this? Well, we can ding on points, we can do this, but there's no real way of testing it. And we're like, well, let's get inside their head. So we worked with a guy who had an EEG that we could hook up and live read, and we can actually tell
cool.
frustration levels. And so not only is this great for Mythbusters, but he actually wrote a paper off it, or is working on a paper, and it's cutting edge actual neuroscience. At the same time, we're giving him a data set he could never collect without our help.
Oh, that's very cool.
That's amazing. So I think technology will lead us forward when we have these unique opportunities when we go, this piece of technology matches up with this myth, that can happen now.
All right, cool. So let me ask you, you do a lot of stuff about special effects, right? There's a lot of that part of this is because it's be real, could have not. So aside from the Mythbuster piece, this is, you know, it's a personal pet peeve of mine, right? Is that in movies, let's just say, you know, the subway car breaks free of the tracks, it goes up the stairs, down the street, and makes a left-hand turn and plows to the building at a constant speed, right? This notion that we just throw away the laws of physics because
It's more
Movies.
yes, because it's movies, right? So you know, kind of where's your take on some of these things? So obviously you're looking at some of these things. Are they real? You want to bust these because they really happen or not? But which are the more interesting ones to do? The ones that you look at like that could be possible, or the ones that's like, you know what, guys, this is just.
I mean,
I mean, I was just going to say, I think we all know Superman doesn't fly, but...
yeah. Well, I was gonna say, because technology is getting so advanced that they're really blurring those CG versus practical effects lines, and so it's really hard to tell if things are real or not. And they make it look so possible sometimes. Those are what we love to test. Like you know, like the subway car that's just like going down and then going across the ocean and skipping across the lake and doing all that stuff. Like, it's not as appealing as, like, let's say someone jumps from the roof of a building and swings, you know, Bruce Willis style Die Hard. We tested that this season because it's like, I wonder if, you know, you look at it and you're like, I feel like that might work in a pinch. And it's crazy that, like, now things are getting more and more extreme. Like, you know, Tom Cruise does all these practical effects in his Mission Impossible movies, and that just opens up the floodgates for us to test things that you're like, I think I could make that jump, or things like that. So it's just like, it's so good.
But then part of that question always too is like, you see it in it and they make the jump, but you know they're rigged for safety. So the question is, could that jump be made without some rigging?
And how do you test it with us?
Talk about that. I've loved the movie Dunkirk lately because it is completely natural effects. And when I saw that, I was like, these explosions, they look more gritty, they look different than I see. And then come to find out later, that's because he relied on real explosions, and it gives you something different. I think there is something true, and I think we've overplayed this sort of blown up, for me at least, animation style. And I think it's time to get back to that raw sort of, like, you know, tweak and color correct and do all that. But let's see an explosion what it looks like in real life, because that's what those people would be experiencing. Right.
And it's the idea of an explosion not being cool.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be the size of Manhattan.
Yeah, everything.
Let's face it. Come on.
Yeah.
We all know this is exciting stuff. So, all right, great. So, again, thanks, guys, for coming down. Thanks for helping us open the exhibition. Congratulations on the first season. We're looking forward to the next one coming on. And when it comes out, I know my kids will be watching it as well. And we're looking forward to seeing this stuff show up in our exhibitions. And you guys, coming on down for Comic-Con.
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely.
Hard side. All right.
Absolute pleasure.
I'm going back to that IMAX now. The
Yes,
projector.
We'll take the IMAX projector. We'll get you behind the dome. We'll show you all sorts of cool stuff.
Oh, very cool.
All right,
Thank you so much
great.
for having us.
Sure, thank you guys, and thank you guys for tuning in and listening, and we'll see you next time.